Getting off drugs isn't easy, and many people fail. So with a drug epidemic touching every community, how do you overcome addiction before it's too late? Mac Miller's comments in a 2016 Fader documentary take on tragic meaning after his death of an apparent drug overdose on September 7th. He was 26 years old, had a new album, and was about to go on a world tour. It's painful to watch as French Montana warns him about a potent mixture of lean, soda mixed with codeine cough syrup, and other substances.
When you're taking something like lean, it is such a gateway into that euphoric opiate type of a high.
Miller lost his battle with substance abuse, and unfortunately, he's not alone. A New York City Health Department survey found overdose deaths rose in 2017, taking the life of one New Yorker every 6 hours. Dr. Arabia Mollett sees it in her emergency room.
People of all races, ethnicities, religious groups, and ages, from school-age children to someone's grandmother.
Drugs like heroin, cocaine, pills, and K2 increasingly are laced with a synthetic opioid, fentanyl, which is the main factor in the rising death toll. We saw an FDNY paramedic and NYPD officers trying to deal with a man who had apparently overdosed in the middle of a South Bronx street.
I'm just flabbergasted at how each day, every hour on the hour, of how many people that come into the emergency department overdose on opiates or Molly or K2.
They have mental stressors that they can escape from within a couple of hours, and it all goes away. The problem is when the drug wears off, all of those problems come back, and it's 10 times worse, if not more, plus the physical symptoms of your body craving it.
There are many factors involved in drug abuse. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me is Terrell Jones. He's the co-chair of the Peer Network New York. His organization provides support to current and former drug users in a variety of ways. We're going to find out all about that. Terrell, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Also joining us is Dr. Arabia Mollett. She's an emergency room physician in Brooklyn. She deals with many drug overdose cases and sees exactly what is happening on the streets. Dr. Mollett, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. Also with us is Tony Sunshine. He's an artist. He is 3 years sober, and he's also working on new music. Tony, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mollett, tell us what you're seeing in the emergency rooms.
So in the emergency room, emergency medicine is a specialty that is comprised of other different specialties, whether it's cardiac to respiratory to trauma. But since July 2016 to September 2017, the number of ED visits, and when I say ED, emergency department visits, has increased to about 30% due to opiate overdoses. And that's what I'm seeing every day, every hour. Starting from school-age children to elderly as well.
So when you say school-age children, how young are we talking?
10 years old, 11 years old, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds. It's sad, it's disheartening. At the same time, it makes my job a lot difficult because, you have the families that are involved and may not understand what's going on or didn't know that their child are abusing opiates in the streets. And the number of deaths is astronomical. And even yesterday, I think the amount of patients that came to our emergency department was due to opiate overdose was so overwhelming to the point where I had to take a break and leave out the emergency room to actually pray and really get my thoughts together how I'm going to be able to take care of this patient that is slowly deteriorating right in front of me.
Because it was so intense and so sad.
Yeah.
That's got to be so heartbreaking.
Yeah, definitely. And then you have the parents or, family members that thinking that or believing that you're not doing anything to help these people, but you really are trying to do the best you can to save their lives. And sometimes there are some that survive and there are some that unfortunately have to make the announcement.
It's so sad to me, just so sad. Terrell, you work with you work with educating people about bringing people back, basically giving them the naloxone and helping them when they do overdose, and you don't leave home without the kit.
That's right.
And tell us what that's like. What is that like for you when you come upon somebody on the street who's clearly or obviously suffering from an overdose?
Very traumatizing because at that moment, this individual's life is in your hands. The quicker you administer the naloxone, your restful breathing to bring this individual back, it's very important because once an individual start losing air to their brains, anything can happen. The person may not survive. Yep. As being boots on the ground, that we're in this fight every day, like I said, I don't want to leave my home without this kid. You have the Bronx, the highest rate of overdoses, Monhaven, Marcenia, Kingsbridge, Hunts Point. There has been a 41% increase in overdose deaths in those neighborhoods.
Yep. Right, and it's totally an epidemic. We've been reporting on it extensively on Fox 5 and
Yes.
and doing a lot of shows here on Street Soldiers. On Tony, help us understand. Let's go back before the overdose, when it's fun, when people are
Right.
out, when people are doing drugs, when people start doing drugs, because there's a certain backlash against substance abusers, which I'm noticing on social media. When
Right.
we even talk about the show, they're like, "Oh, let them overdose.
Yep.
One
Right.
less junkie to deal with on the street." But I look at it like, this is a human being. How can people be talking about that? But help us understand, how does the addiction process happen? Because, there's a lot of artists that are on lean. There's a lot of artists that are taking pills. There's a lot of artists that maybe with the heroin that's out there now, with the fentanyl, snorting it a little bit, taking that little straw and putting it up their nose like cocaine. Help us
Well,
understand that. Like, how did you get caught up?
I think for me personally, and I think it's the case with a lot of our youth, is my first choice of drug was validation, seeking validation. So being around all the wrong people opens doors for certain things. After seeking validation, then curiosity sets in. You understand? You allow yourself to do certain things that you were taught not to do. But I think that the problem begins now that prescription drugs replaced illegal drugs. It's so easy to get your hands on prescription drugs these days, and doctors are filling out these prescriptions at an all-time high. These kids are not just doing heroin and things like that. They're doing fentanyl, they're doing Xanax, they're doing Percocets, they're doing all these things that you can get from the doctor. You need
Well,
a
you
prescription
can get, and
for those
there have
things.
been a lot of laws and changes and crackdowns on that. But let me
Right.
just come back to your story, though. How did you know when you had a problem? Because you've been very open on Instagram talking about 3 years, 3 years sober. How did you know that you had a problem?
Man, I just had to look in the mirror. I just had to look in the mirror at myself and say, you have a real problem. You have a real problem, and it's something that you have to do for yourself. I tried to get myself together quite a few times. I went to different rehabs, detoxes. They didn't seem to work for me. Prison. None of those things worked for me. It had to be up to me. I made an attempt one last time to get myself together. I went up to this rehab. A situation occurred in the rehab where there was like a little racial riot between the Dominicans and the Puerto Ricans, and I just lost my mind. Like, is this really happening in a rehab center? Mm-hmm. And the state troopers had to get involved. They placed us around the basketball court like if we was in the yard.
I know.
Like it was in the
Like,
prison yard.
yeah, like if we was
let's,
in the
let's
prison
talk
yard.
about that in a minute. But let me just come back to the availability of the drugs. Dr. Malik,
Right.
there's been a lot of changes though in terms of the prescriptions and how easy it is, and the accountability, a lot more accountability for a lot of doctors. The people that are coming in, the youth especially, that are coming into your ER, what drugs cause their overdose?
Opiates, whether it be from morphine to Dilaudid to Percocets, mainly Percocets. Fentanyl can be found in the streets. You don't have to have a prescription to abuse fentanyl. There are black markets for Percocets. There are black markets for, obviously, for morphine. When you take heroin, once you ingest heroin, whether it's by snorting to injecting or smoking it, it actually converts to morphine. And so to understand the whole, to understand opiate addiction or the opiate crisis, you have to understand the physiological and the psychological effects that comes with these drugs. All right, the long-term effects is depression, anxiety, antisocial personality disorder. From the physical aspect of things, which I see both of them, is the lung infections. People who are developing pneumonias. Tuberculosis is on the rise because opiates can cause respiratory depressions. Abscesses, what we call in the hood boils, because of skin popping. People come in with all types of, their nasal passages are destroyed because now it's, at what we say perforated, actually making holes into your nasal passages as well. Even infections in the heart. Coma, death, you name it, is really evident and prevalent when it comes down to opiate drug abuse. And so with going back to prescriptions, what a lot of people don't know is that as an ER doctor, I've worked in worked in places where hospital surveys are encouraging the overprescription of drugs, of prescribing opiates.
Right, and there's that whole issue also with big pharma pushing these and incentives. Let's on that note, let's come back to that point, but we need to take a short break. This is Street Soldiers. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. We'll be right back.
I'm an extremist by nature, so if I'm gonna be fly, I'm gonna be fly. If I'm gonna get high, I'm gonna get high.
Terrell, what is the main reason? Because this is a question that's come up on every social media posting, that I have put out on this topic. What makes people do drugs in the first place? Yes, there's experimentation. Yes, people want to get high. There's that phase in life, as a teen or young person, where you really want to try every different thing. But what do you think it's the difference between those that just try it and don't get addicted, and those who try it and it takes over their life?
So I'm going to speak on my personal experience, me being a former user. I like the way it made me feel. That euphoric feeling just made me feel good. But also you got to look at individuals that have been stigmatized, traumatized, why they use drugs. Individuals that are suffering from mental ill conditions. There's so many various reasons why people are using, and this comes down to that particular person, why they're using. It has to be
Everybody's
that
different.
person. You cannot generalize everyone. This has to be something that you address with this person here, what's going on with them. You know what I'm saying?
Tony, what about what Terrell said, that that's kind of what the message that doesn't get out too, is that the fact is that drugs do make people feel better.
The fact is that it does. It makes you feel like you're on top of the world for the moment, till it doesn't, till you start becoming dependent, till it starts dragging you down, till it starts affecting your personal life, your work ethic.
But then also, again, like Tony stated, that for some people it becomes problematic.
Right.
And it became problematic with me when, health started declining, going to prison, being homeless, recognizing that fact that, I need to do something about this. And this is why we do the education with individuals in the street about, is your drug use problematic to you? You're the only one that can make that decision.
But if you're in the
That's a
street
fact.
and you're doing drugs, isn't that a problem already?
It is.
People say that.
I'm just asking. I'm not. No judgment, just a question.
See, that's the thing. Like, it's judgment, and people need to stop judging people when it comes to drug use. Because if I'm homeless and I'm comfortable with being out there, who are you to judge me about what I do?
Dr. Millett, what about
that? I do agree with you to the extent, but when it becomes a problem, when I'm seeing young people, especially kids, teenagers, people, grandmothers that are overdosing, it is a problem. It is a problem, whether they do it in the streets or at home. I think that, my friend asked me the other day, she said, what can we do to help this crisis? And I said, she said, we need more education. We need to start educating people. Trauma is real. Right. Emotional pain is real.
It is.
Physical pain is
Definitely
real.
is.
Definitely.
And the way how our culture has become in the United States is like a quick fix culture, where that people are popping pills because it helps them, or believes to help them for everything, right? To help
Take
them.
a pill and you feel better.
Exactly, and that's not always the case. And I think that
that's
if
what we believe in the beginning. We believe that it's solving our issues. Let me take this pill and I'm gonna forget, and everything is gonna be okay tomorrow.
Right, and I think
tomorrow you're gonna need 2, and the next day you're gonna need 3, and after that you're gonna need 4, and after that the snowball effect comes, and after that your downfall is immense.
And this is why I think that I personally believe that it's not. I think that with everything that's going on as far as educating people and getting out into the communities, I don't think it should just start with the adults. It has to start with children that are experiencing trauma at the age of 5 years old or even younger.
The mental health, the mental health issues, and especially
so make better choices in life,
and especially in underserved or economically challenged communities.
Exactly.
But let me ask you, Tony, what was the hardest thing? Did you have multiple times of trying rehab and then failing? You've been clean for 3 years, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
And congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But help us understand. So you take one pill, you're there, you take more pills to get that same feeling. Now you're doing. What was the craziest that it got for you, or that where you were just
my snowball effect was crazy because I'm an extremist by nature. So if I'm gonna be fly, I'm gonna be fly. If I'm gonna get high, I'm gonna get high. If we fight and whatever it is I do. So you know, once I discovered something that made me feel great, I wanted more.
Exactly.
And when that didn't work, I moved on to the next. And when that didn't work, I moved on to the next. And now I became a junkhead, you know, which
When you
was,
say that, help us, what are you talking about exactly?
well, you know, the feeling, just feeling good and high and feeling like your problems are over.
Were
and
you,
just,
were you doing heroin? Were you
It's
doing
euphoria.
coke? What were you doing?
name it.
Of course, we're focusing on the streets because it's street soldiers, but it's also, this is a problem too that affects people in all levels of society,
right.
all races, all economic classes. But again, you know, your resources to beat that problem or solve that problem a lot of times depend on your zip code. We
Right.
all know that.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is, you look at former Disney star Demi Lovato.
Yeah.
There, you know, she allegedly took these drugs. The man who is her friend, who sounded more like her dealer to me,
dealer.
said, "Hey, I told her they were strong. I gave them to her. I told her you know, it was extra strong," and she came within probably inches of losing her life. Mac Miller with the started on lean, which you
her.
know in the music industry is that's like the starter drug for
Yeah.
for a lot of kids. What do you think about how the music industry handles the drug issue,
I just think promoting,
making it look cool?
I think promoting getting high to these kids is at an all-time high. There was a time where promoting drugs in our music wasn't cool, and today is like
It's the coolest
it's
thing.
almost a requirement,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like if
Everybody's
if you're not,
moving weight.
if you're
Everybody's-
not, right. If you're not talking about getting high or popping a perk or sipping some
down.
lean,
Right.
or you're not talking about, you know, certain things, your music is not getting played and you're
Yep.
not considered cool. And you know, these labels, the DJs, the producers, they're all for it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And another thing too, Lisa, would be another drug that is purchased over the counter is Imodium AD, which is an opiate. It's an anti-diarrhea drug.
Imodium?
Imodium is an opiate, and for the past couple of years, there's been an increase of abuse in Imodium AD.
Let me take advantage of us having you here with your medical experience. When you have these 10, 11, 12-year-olds that are overdosing that come into the emergency room, what have they taken? Is it K2? Are they taking
Molly, Percocets,
Molly's, Percocets.
mainly Molly and Percocets.
Molly and Percocets?
But
Molly
you
and
see, Lisa,
Percocets.
like in Staten Island, 18% decrease in overdoses within the last year. In the Bronx, you have a 93% increase. And why is that? Because of funding.
Yep.
Let's not count out
Resources.
methadone.
You know what I'm saying? Because we're not getting the resources and the help that Staten Island is
I
getting.
absolutely agree. I totally agree.
But what kind of help would it be? Because there's listen, you go up Morris Avenue towards 161st Street. I go anywhere around the hub. There's like 5, 6, 7 I don't know what they're called, outpatient facilities where people are getting methadone, where they're getting you know, whatever other support they can get.
Methadone.
But what
But
about
again,
that?
like I'm saying, people have to find the right treatment for them. And is that being offered to people? Is this information being given to the community?
I want to thank my guests for being with us for this episode of Street Soldiers. Terrell Jones, co-chair of the Peer Network of New York. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me here.
We appreciate it. Also with us, Dr. Arabia Millette, emergency room physician in Brooklyn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great to have you. Also with us, Tony Sunshine, artist, 3 years sober. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers. Remember, use your mind. It's your best weapon. I hope it's your only weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace.